Dr. Simonian.
It's really wonderful to see you all. It's very kind and thoughtful of you to come in your busy schedule to listen to a fellow, American, about some parts of his life story, both familiar and professional, like you all have yourselves. So, we are Americans, somewhat immigrants since Christopher Columbus discovered it. And what I'm going to talk to you about is first my professional achievements, very briefly, namely that I've been fortunate to have been recruited by excellent team members who were innovators in medical science, in that they were researchers, they were creators of new knowledge to save lives and to relieve pain and suffering, which is obviously very important in our planet, in our world, with so many germs, so many catastrophes, so many infections, so many diseases like cancer, so many diseases like venous vascular disease, which gives deep vein thrombosis, which goes through the lungs and kills the people. And I've been involved with all these. And with the team, we've been fortunate in making solutions, innovations, and created life-saving and pain-relieving methodologies. And I want to share these with you. Second, I've been an educator, a professor of surgery. And I have been a professor of surgery in 17 universities, including Harvard University, University of Chicago, University of Pennsylvania, and Georgetown University, UCLA, USC, as well as Hahnemann and Vanderbilt. And abroad, Oxford University, Cambridge University, London University, Edinburgh University, Stockholm University, Karolinska Institute at Athens University. In addition to that, I've had the privilege of being invited as a professor lecturer in 300 congresses and conferences and meetings, both in the United States and all over the world, including Japan, Tokyo, Kyoto, Australia, Sydney, including Germany, Berlin, France, Paris, and Lyon, and Corsica, and Italy, Rome, and Netherlands, The Hague, and South America, Argentina, and Brazil, and North America, Canada, Montreal, and Toronto, as well as many, many cities in the United States. So I've been very fortunate to learn from all these places, as well as to share some of my knowledge with them. It's been a win-win situation. And that's what my life has been, a win-win situation. Working with teams who have been interested in making everybody win by working together, bringing their different talents together. And as you know, different talents help strengthen the power of the team. That's why we have different fingers that make the hand able to function, because they are all bringing different kinds of expertise to the hand. That's why we have a face that has different organs, like the eye and the mouth and the nose and the ears, that work together, all different, to strengthen the power of the life-giving face for food and survival and growth and multiplication. So it's been with the teams I've worked with. I've worked with University of London, which is a place at University College London, which had about 19 Nobel Prize winners. And 4 of the teachers I had there were Nobel Prize winners. So you see the kind of quality I was working with. And I was recruited to work on a new vaccine called freeze-dried smallpox heat-stable vaccine. And smallpox at the time was killing about 4 people a minute, 6,000 a day, 2 million a year for 3,000 years. Although there was a vaccine, it was inactive in 1 day, so it couldn't be transported all over the world. And only the Western countries were able to save lives. Whereas in the rest of the 165 countries out of the 195, they didn't have the vaccine. So 2 million people died each year. For this went on for 3,000 years. Since 1157 BCE, Ramses V, the pharaoh, was discovered to have pustules in his mummy, from which he died of smallpox. So for 3,000 years, 2 million people dead, it killed 6 billion people. 6 billion people, equal to the population of the world just a few years ago. Now, fortunately, with the vaccine we made at the University of London, with 2 people, myself and Leslie Collier, it was freeze-dried, heat-stable, and it was active for 1 year. And it was tested, and it was active for 1 year. Instead of 1 day, the previous vaccine was inactivated in 1 day. So this was a miracle. And the World Health Organization in Geneva decided to have a smallpox eradication program. And they took this vaccine and vaccinated everybody in the world for the first time in history. In a 10-year period, like we took 10 years to go to the moon. 67 to 77, and everybody was vaccinated. And in 77, the last case of smallpox was in Somalia, East Africa, in a cook who had been vaccinated and survived. Since then, 0 deaths from smallpox in 1977. In 40 years, we have saved 80 million lives from this one disease. And I'm sure you've done equally good works yourself, sitting there quietly and don't have the opportunity to be on this podium to share it with us. The second thing I was involved with was in Boston at Harvard University Medical School in Boston. There was a team working on a project to see what nutrition did for immunity and immune response to infection. If you ate good diet, you had good immunity, you survived. If you ate a poor diet, you were poor, couldn't afford it, chances were you would succumb to the infection because you didn't have enough immune protein bodies to kill the germ or the virus. And this was proven in rats. One group had a normal diet, made a lot of antibody, another group made less antibody with poor diet. During the experiment, however, a day came when neither rats made antibody at all in their experiment. Neither rats made any antibody to the injected antigen to test the immune response. And they were puzzled. There were 5 of them at Harvard Medical School and the Harvard School of Public Health. Professors and staff and assistant scientists. And they couldn't figure out. So when I was recruited, I tested all the testing methods, which were perfect. The experimental method was perfect. The only thing that was a question was the rats. Were the rats the same that they had been using before, which made antibody, compared to the rats now that were making no antibody? So I called the lab, breeding rats lab, Charles River Labs. What about these rats the last 6 months that are not making antibody? Are they different to the rats you sent us before? They said, no, they are the same. The only difference, we sent you before from building A, now we've been sending the last 6 months from building B in our labs, breeding labs. But the parents are the same. I said, why don't you send us some from building A like you did 6 months before? And when they did, we injected these rats, they made antibody. Clearly, these rats from building A were different genetically to the rats from building B. And when we married the rats from A and B, the babies made antibody. indicating that the gene in the makers that was dominant and passed through the first failure generation to the children to make antibody. And those that were non-responders, some were responders. And the non-responders obviously would die from such an infection because they didn't have the genes to protect themselves, make the antibody. So what we discovered was a new medical science field called immunogenetics of the rat. That's been saving millions of lives now with scientists, thousands of them working on the immunogenetics of the rat. They genetically engineer the rats in certain ways to make adjustments to the diseases that we suffer from, like autoimmune diseases, arthritis, all kinds, autoimmune diseases of various genetic diseases, chronic diseases, all kinds that kill people. And now we are saving millions of lives every year and reducing suffering from the discovery of immunogenetics at Harvard Medical School Department of Pathology. Now, as a result of that work, it was worthy of a Nobel Prize, but it wasn't reported to the Nobel Committee because there were people before this discovery in the United States, namely Reginald Snell, who discovered the immunogenetics in the mouse. He got a Nobel Prize. There was Baruch Benacerraf, who discovered the immunogenetics of the guinea pig. He got a Nobel Prize. We discovered in the rat, which is just as important as the mouse in experimental biology, but we didn't apply, so we left that. Give you a moment's rest before I move on to the next thing. Regarding my involvement with patient care, in addition to research in the lab, patient care, I was a certified diplomate of surgery in the United Kingdom, a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons of Scotland, Edinburgh. And by the way, this Presbyterian religion was really developed by a Scotsman in Edinburgh by the name of Knox, K-N-O-X, as well as John Calvin, who was a Frenchman, was persecuted by the Catholics, and he had to leave France and go to Switzerland to continue his work of Protestantism, and he was influenced by Martin Luther of Germany, the Lutherans. So the Presbyterian Church has a church in Scotland, Edinburgh, where I've been and attended service in myself, because I lived in Edinburgh for several years to train in surgery and to teach both surgery and anatomy in Edinburgh University. So, but when I came to the United States, 1965, 52 years ago, the Board of Surgery in the United States said, sorry, we don't accept anything other than United States surgical diplomas. You have to do your residency all over again in the United States. I was at that time in Boston, and I had 2 children, my wife, and we had bought a new home because I had been on the faculty of Harvard University with reasonably good salary. But when I had to do the residency again, my salary dropped. We couldn't afford to really survive. So instead of having one job, I had 2 jobs during the repeat surgical training in America. And the repeat surgical training, you know how many hours it was a week? 123 hours for the repeat surgery, 123 hours for 4 years, 3 times the 40 hours a week. Plus, I got a second job to reimburse my salary of 24 hours, 2 nights, from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. in an emergency room. So I worked 147 hours for 2 years. I didn't go home to sleep. I remember one time I didn't sleep for 8 days flat. I was sleeping on my chair between patients, closing my eye till the nurse would say, your next patient's in. Wake up, take care. And I survived. And I became a fellow of the American College of Surgeons as well as the British. So after that, I moved on to University of Chicago, assistant professor, then to Hahnemann, professor and director of kidney transplantation, and then chairman of the Department of Surgery in Detroit with 189 faculty members and 25 trainees, with 12 divisions of cardiac surgery, thoracic surgery, orthopedic surgery, plastic surgery, and so on. And so when Ronald Reagan, President of the United States, last year of his presidency, 88, came to visit Detroit, I was appointed his surgeon-in-chief to protect his life. And when George H.W. Bush was elected president as his vice president, the following year, 1989, he came to Detroit. I was again appointed surgeon-in-chief to President George H.W. Bush to save and protect his life. Now, in between that, my surgical work involved taking care of 50,000 patients. You know, a basketball field, spectators are roughly 10,000. So imagine 5 of those. The people there, I took care of them in my surgical work. 50,000 people. In terms of operating with my own hands, 20,000 people I've operated on in the operating room with my own hands. 2 basketball field attendants, imagine. That many. Each one separately to save their lives or to relieve their suffering. Now, and I did it in general surgery, kidney transplantation, and in venous vascular surgery, which is another thing I'm going to come to in a moment. Regarding my educational work, I was an educator as well at the universities that I worked in. I was a teacher where I trained 2,000 medical students. Now we are about 50 here, so 2,000 is about, maybe 20 times this room. Medical students to become doctors, and I trained 500 doctors to become surgeons, training them in the operating room, technology and education, and I trained 17 doctors, surgeons to become researchers in the lab as well. And in addition to that, as I mentioned earlier, I was invited to lecture internationally, many centers in the world, and there we exchanged knowledge about thousands of my peers who both gave me their research innovations and I gave them our own research innovations. So that was kind of my educational contribution to American surgery for the future generations of surgeons and researchers. And regarding publications, because as a professor you have to publish articles for your innovations. And you have also to publish books if you can. I've published more than 300 scientific articles, co-authored, as well as 4 books co-authored, as well as a 5th book now on cultures, building cultures of peace in the world, particularly from Southern California. And the 6th book is about a more world regarding peace and justice union that we are working on. Now coming back to the research, having talked about smallpox eradication, the first disease eradicated in history, saving 2 million lives a year, forever, since 77, 80 million lives to date, was the third thing, and immunogenetics the second. The third thing that we got involved with was again in Boston. In Boston, I was very much interested in the only center in the English-speaking world that did kidney transplantation. The first organ that was transplanted was the kidney. And it started in Boston at Harvard Medical School, Peter Brigham Hospital, by a doctor called Dr. Joseph Murray, M-U-R-R-A-Y. I heard about him when I was in Edinburgh teaching and becoming a surgeon years before. I said, how can I work with this man one day? I said, it's a long shot from Edinburgh to Harvard in Boston. I said, maybe somehow we'll find a way to do it. Maybe, miraculously, he himself may ask me to work with him. And guess what? After we discovered immunogenetics a year before at Harvard Medical School in the Department of Pathology, and Harvard gave me 2 degrees, Master of Science and Doctor of Science, making me the first surgeon to receive a Doctor of Science from Harvard University. And guess who heard about it? Joseph Murray. Joseph Murray, as I predicted, called me and said, son, I'd be so happy if you'll work with me. We are having trouble with kidney transplants in the human. In identical twins, there's no problem. Technically, we can do the transplant, but in unrelated, non-identical people, if the donor is different genetically, then the recipient rejects the kidney and kills it 100%. We have to have some kind of immune suppression of the recipient. So the response of rejection is weakened and the kidney survives. We have 2 drugs already, azathioprine and prednisolone, but only 50% of the kidneys are surviving. The other 50 are still being rejected in 1968. Please come and help us to see if we can make it better. So armed with Doctor of Science from Harvard, MD from London, FRCS from Edinburgh, BA and A from Oxford, he knew all these things. And he knew that I was also a surgeon. So we worked in the lab, and I became director of immunology at Harvard Medical School in the division of surgery. Like he was director of surgical transplantation in the division of surgery, I became director of immunology in the division of surgery. And there, within a year, we created a third immunosuppressive agent called IgG immunoglobulin, which was directed against the rejection cells of the recipient human who was trying to reject this unrelated kidney it received for life-saving his life. Because the body thought this was a germ, foreign to its body. And the body is made in such a way that it accepts itself, but rejects everything which is not self, like a kidney transplant. So when we gave the IgG immunoglobulin in a group of dogs, 12 dogs, got azathioprine prednisolone, they rejected in 1 year 50%. With this, the second group got the third drug as well as azathioprine prednisolone, IgG immunoglobulin, survival was 100% in 1 year in the second group. Guess what happened to Joseph Murray? He got a Nobel Prize. He was the first American bone surgeon to ever get a Nobel Prize in 1990. Just very recently. And he and I decided to have a joint prize at Harvard Medical School. It's called the Joseph Murray Simonian Prize in Research Excellence in Surgery. That's given at Harvard Medical School, Department of Surgery, Brigham and Women's Hospital. Our headshots are in the honor board in the library, and below are plaques for the winners, whose names are engraved forever, since 1999, and 4 people win it each year, 2 mentees and 2 mentors. The research doers, the best research in surgery at Harvard each year, and the best professors who help the research creators of that particular year. So 4 people get it. And in pathology, where we discovered immunogenetics, we have my mentor was Thomas Gill, so we have a joint prize, Thomas Gill and Simonian Prize in Research Excellence in Pathology, where immunogenetics was discovered, and there's a headshot in the Department of Pathology at Harvard, with his and mine, and engraving since 2008 of winners, 1 in mentee and 1 mentor who win the prize, 2 in pathology and 4 in surgery. In addition, because of the nutritional thing in the first one, immunogenetics, at Harvard School of Public Health Department of Nutrition, we have a prize with my wife called the Simon, RP, and my mother, Marie, Simonian Prize in Research Excellence in Nutrition. That's given each year since 2008 to 4 people, 2 mentees and 2 mentors. So we have 10 Simonian Prizes at Harvard Medical School each year, forever. So now what happened after I did the training in surgery, the American surgery, that took 4 years for me to get the fellow of the American College of Surgeons. And I went to University of Chicago, where we were looking at the cancer problem. I did kidney transplants there, cancer surgery there, as well as educate medical students, residents, and so on. But we were looking at cancer. We knew that chemotherapy killed every cell given to a cancer patient. So you couldn't give enough immunotherapy because it killed their bone marrow cells, which were life-saving, and you couldn't give enough. The cancer survived and killed the patient. So we wanted to create a drug that was targeted to kill cancer cells, but avoid killing normal cells. So we combined chemically a protein like an antibody against the cancer to a killing agent, the protein to a killing agent like a little bomb. That, you know, you take the airplane, you put a bomb, and then the bomb is released to kill the target. So we had same principle, the antibody protein attached the bomb and then injected into mice to see if it would separate, and it didn't separate. The bonding was covalent, it was firm, it stayed together until the target. So we also put the foundations in the University of Chicago with 10 scientists, with me being the leader, for immunotherapy, which is saving millions of lives at present. That was 1974 to 77. So that's another field I was involved with my research. And then again, I was a teacher, as well as an educator, as well as taking care of patients in the operating. After Chicago, I moved to Philadelphia in Harlem in order to do more professorial surgery. Director of kidney transplantation, and there I did a first clinical trial in humans of this third agent that we used in dogs at Harvard, and I found that in humans, 12 who got 2 azothioprine prednisone had 50% kidney survival, unrelated donors, and the 3 drugs, 12 patients had 100% survival, confirming what we found in dogs. So that was another thing we did. In a 10-year period, I was at Harlem in Philadelphia, but there I was also teaching Medical College of Pennsylvania, as well as University of Pennsylvania as a professor, as well as at Harvard University. Then we moved to Detroit in order to be chairman of the Department of Surgery, and I mentioned that I had President Reagan and President Bush. This is from, well, I don't have President Reagan's seal here, which is with me. After that, I looked at, again, a new problem, because my forte appeared to be solving problems. Finding the answer to needs, human needs. And I searched and found out that venous vascular disease, namely called phlebology, wasn't fully developed, and it needed help. So I moved into that field and established a vein institute, V-E-I-N, Vein Institute, in Greater Washington, D.C. It was the oldest vein institute in the country, and I worked, my wife joined me, working there as the director of the Vein Institute herself, and with our staff, and in a 16-year period from 1990 till 2006, we developed the field of phlebology, venous vascular diseases, from its, what it used to be, to an academic, more with research oriented, in order to prevent deep vein thrombosis and to also make it easier to treat venous vascular diseases like varicose veins, for example. Varicose vein was treated in the operating room with surgical, rough surgery, sometimes needing transfusion, and the patient in the hospital 5 days and off for 2 weeks or 3 weeks off. We changed all that with the help of many other collaborators in the United States to a procedure where the operation was done in an office without anesthesia. Eyes closed, local anesthesia. The bad veins were closed, and the patient went home with a Band-Aid and compression stockings, driving herself home. So that was another trial. And now millions of lives are being saved throughout the world, because there are about 7 million people who get deep vein thrombosis in the world, 300,000 in the United States, and die from it, many of them. And now there's a lot of life saving and a lot of prevention of suffering from venous vascular disease. In addition to that, there was a related disease called lymphatic vascular disease. Lymphatic. The lymphatics, you work normally, we don't know they exist because they work so well. You don't have swelling of your legs or arms. These patients have swelling of their arms and legs because the lymphatics don't drain the fluid away. The gravity makes it go swelling all over the place, and their life is shortened, and they have many, many, many painful days to live with. And we developed that field of lymphatic vascular disease, lymphology, in an 8-year period from 1998 until 2006, in order to make that a disease, a known disease for doctors to work in. There were no doctors taking care of lymphatic patients. They didn't know how to take care of them. the only people who took care of them were masseurs therapists who massaged the swelling, you know, with their hands like that to reduce it and make the patient feel less pain, at least for a day until they came back next day for another massage. But with treatment, we organized the doctors to make diagnosis and treat them better with compression stockings, for example, and with education, so their lives were enhanced. And 2 million people suffer from that in the United States, about 50 million in the world, and now they are living more comfortably with lymphatic vascular disease. We wrote the first textbook of lymphology in the United States, and I served as president for 6 years, as the president of the American Society of Lymphology from 2001 to 2006, during this process of developing the field of lymphatic vascular disease, lymphology. So those are the 6 fields I was involved with, but there were another 10 I won't mention, where namely, again, the eradication of smallpox. Second, the discovery of immunogenetics of the rat. Third, immunosuppression to make kidney transplantation 100% successful. Fourth, immunotherapy for specifically targeting cancer cells rather than normal cells. And fifth, the development of venous vascular disease, which we developed in such a way that we also philanthropically donated it to Georgetown University Hospital, having been in Washington, D.C. area, developing with the Vein Institute. We gave it to the Georgetown University Hospital, making it the first university hospital in the country to have an organized phlebological program for patient care, teaching, and research. And that was, I was told, the biggest donation Georgetown University has had in its history. Now, regarding myself, I was born in a city called Antioch. It's an old city in the Middle East. And at one time it belonged to Armenians, Antioch. King Dertat ruled all over that place, including way down to Egypt and way north and east in Greater Armenia. But then it changed hands to Persians, Turks, Romans, Greeks, and so on. And when I was born, it was under the France, and my parents had been orphaned. Both my parents were orphans. My mother orphaned at 6, my father orphaned at 12. They grew up in the Middle East, they married in Beirut, Lebanon, outside of Turkey, because the Turkey was the cause of causing this orphanage. Many were not that lucky to be alive. I never saw my grandparents either side, or my great aunts or uncles. They were all murdered. So I was a child of 2 orphan parents. But my mother was saved by missionaries from England and Wales. They were Quakers, Religious Society of Friends, and we had representatives on this table of the Quakers from my church in Santa Monica, and there also Maggie Hutchison. And somehow she was saved, and she was trained to become a teacher, and then trained at the American University of Beirut, Lebanon, to become a nurse. And then she became a head nurse of the Lebanon Mental Hospital. She was working both in the hospital and at home to help with our survival, earning enough income with my orphan father, who became a businessman. He became a barber, he became a businessman in order to make a living. But unfortunately, my father's work was never enough to make enough of a living by himself until the very end. But meantime, my mother had to work. And meantime, I had to work for my own education and living. And guess what? Since age 13, I have been taking, age 13, I've been taking care 100% of my needs for food, clothing, shelter, education, and everything else. And now I'm very happy to have a family. I married Arby, my wife, 52 years ago in Lebanon when I went for a vacation from Oxford after getting my BA. And there one of my sisters, I have 3 sisters, introduced me to Arby as one of their classmates. We got to know each other for a year in Lebanon, 64 to 65. And she was already a Bachelor's of Science and Master of Science at the American University, an instructor in chemistry at the time I met her. And we married. 8 clergy married us on the altar, because her father was dean of the seminary. and 8 clergymen. And the Catholicos, the head clergyman, also came from vacation for summer, July 11th, in order to bless us. So 9 people married us 52 years ago. You can imagine how tight the tie was. Look, 52 years, we're still tied together. We were lucky and fortunate, and God's blessing. We have 3 sons, 2 of whom are here. Leonard Simonian, born in 68, and Andrew Simonian, born in 75. And so they are married, and their wives are here. Christy Simonian, a graduate of Pepperdine, has been married together. They have 3 children, 2 men, young men, and a daughter. The daughter is the oldest. She is a junior this year at UCLA, a granddaughter, junior, Taylor. And then we have Trevor and Trent. And Trevor is freshman at University of Pennsylvania, where Len, when we were in Philadelphia, went to school and got double first, as they call it at Oxford, meaning summa cum laude in both the Wharton School of Finance and the BA for American History at Arts and Sciences at University of Pennsylvania. That's Len, a genius. Yeah. Double first. Obviously, that wasn't enough. He was recruited by Harvard Law School to get a JD degree as well. Yeah, so he is an investment banker, worked in Santa Monica, and we are very proud of him and his wife, Christy, and their 3 children. Then we have Andrew, who is youngest of our 3 sons. The second one is in New York, Charles, we'll come to in a moment. And Andrew is both a TV and movie producer and director and scriptwriter. And he's a published author, and he's working on a movie now, making himself. He's written the script and shooting it with his team. And he's a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania, like his brother Len. He did his 4-year work in 3 years, got his degree cum laude. So he's another genius young man. And then his wife is Nicole. She is they are all born in the United States. Nicole is a descendant of a well-known author, Pulitzer Prize winning author, William Saroyan. And she's a descendant of that family. And she is a graduate of UCLA, Phi Beta Kappa, and then Loyola Law School JD, and she's a lawyer, and she is in charge of the Asia affairs in her law firm. So that's Nicole. Really? A very hard worker. They have 2 children, Alex and Ashley, 11 now, just entered 7th grade in Brentwood School, middle school, and Ashley, who is at John D. Dye, Thomas Dye Elementary School in Bel Air. And Charles in New York was born in 75, and 71, and he is a hedge fund owner. He went to the University of Michigan, where he got his summa cum laude degree, 4.2 average, and then developed a hedge fund which he manages in Manhattan, New York. They live in Manhattan, east of the Park, and they have 3 children, a son who is in middle school, and 2 daughters, younger daughters, and they live in East Park in Manhattan. So I was 1 when I was born, and before I married Artie, now we are 16. So we are blessed with that. And so we are grateful. Thank you. Let me take a seat here for a moment and take a sip of water, maybe.
Simon, I think we should take a little time for some Q&A.
Yeah, is it
Perhaps
time
we
already
have,
now?
yes.
Is it 1 o'clock already?
It's fine.
That's fine.
We don't have time for Q&A. We wanted to leave time in case you had questions, because, oops, no, it's all right. We would take time for it, okay?
Yeah, Simon, I've known you a long time and I have a lot of respect for you. I was just wondering, hearing all your accomplishments, is there anything you haven't done that you want to do?
Yes, well, yes. when I retired, Debbie, from my academic, surgical, and professorial and research work in 2006, I was always thinking, why is the world not as perfect as it should be in terms of relationships with people working together? Why aren't people more loving? Why aren't people more collaborating with each other, like I did in my research, for example? Why are people hurting each other, killing each other for various reasons, whether it's religious, political, or philosophical reasons? So I was always thinking how we could bring peace and justice in the world, and that's what I've been working on, and I'm continually working on that. There's a book I'm co-editing with 4 others, Building Cultures of Peace, and there's a book I'm writing also on a world union with justice and peace. In addition to that, I'm representing the Quakers in the Religious Council of Southern California on the board of directors, ICUJP, Interfaith United for Justice and Peace, and Southern California Christian Forum, Parliament of World Religions, and so on. I'm with many religious groups as well as peace groups, working to see how we can bring more justice, more peace, more harmony, more love, as we have in this room been having during the past hour in the world. That's what I'm working on, Debbie.
Heaven knows that's good.
Yeah.
Do you have some more questions? Yes, Mary?
Simon, we are very honored to have you here, and we thank you very much for helping humanity. Your career is just a blessing, and God bless you, and God bless people like you who help the humanitarian blood. That is really very touching. The older I get, the more I appreciate people like you. Now, a couple of months ago, on the internet, I read a message saying that there is a research being done in Switzerland and in Austria about cancer cells. And to my surprise, and to the man who was writing it, to his surprise, they are discovering the mother's milk, the mother of the child, milk from the breast, is curing and killing cancer cells. Now this was such a surprise to me, such a wonderful way to hear this. And I was thinking, who can I ask about the trueness of this? You will be the best person to ask this. I mean, if there is a truth in this, it is, even the writer on the internet was saying, it is so unbelievably distant from what we were researching all these years. The mother is right in the family. We never knew this. And they are discovering this on animals like mice and dogs and cats. And for humans also, they tried, this was about 2 months ago or so, and they discovered that it's killing a lot of cancer cells. Is there any truth in this?
Yes,
or
yes.
Thank you.
By the way, Miran Kodjian is an international violinist. He lives in the Palisades. He's been concertmaster of the National Symphony Orchestra in Washington, D.C. at the Kennedy Center for many years. He's been concertmaster of the Santa Barbara Symphony Orchestra, and he's played here as a violinist at the Hollywood Bowl and many other venues as a violinist. And he is internationally known and respected. And yes, it is true. When we are born, our immune response as babies is very weak. It's not developed yet. It takes time to develop, you know, with environment, contacts, etc. New immune cells begin to develop in the bone marrow and in the lymphatics, all right? And it's these immune cells are lymphatic cells as well as antibodies that are made by the lymphatic cells. This takes time, but the mother is immune already. And in the milk, there's a lot of immune proteins that are transmitted to the baby's body. So the baby becomes more immune faster. In fact, the reason you and I don't get cancer is because of our immune cells protecting us against cancer cells. Cancer cells are emerging all the time in our body, all of us. Cancer cells are emerging, but our immune response is killing them before they emerge and multiply. You see? So the mother's milk that has the immune bodies is already killing, helping the baby to kill its cancer cells if it was one of those babies unlucky enough to be developing cancer early on. And cancer is developed all throughout our life. And as we get older, our immune response becomes weaker, so older people get more cancer as a result. And then medications are needed to help the patient whose immune response is not strong enough to kill the cancer cells. And now those immunotherapy is one of the ones that I've helped to work on. All right, Mira?
Thank you.
Another question?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
is lymphoderma, which I guess some people that have breast cancer surgery and then they have chemo and then they can get lymphoderma pain in their arms or whatever. Is that similar to that lymph illness you were talking about?
Exactly so. Because the lymphatic vessels, together with the venous lymphatic and the arterial vessels, there are three vessels. The arterial vessels bring the oxygen and nutrition to the breast. The veins drain away the carbon dioxide and the waste products away from the breast. And the lymphatics do the same. They remove the waste products away from the breast, okay? But in surgery, when the cancer has spread from the breast to the lymphatic nodes, and the surgeon has to remove them, the lymphatic and the venous vessels are severed, are divided, so they can't drain anymore into the blood, into the heart, for it to circulate away. And what happens? They begin to cause swelling, lymphedema, and that's exactly one of the causes of lymphedema. Besides infection, surgery, unfortunately, is one of the complications of lymphedema. And they have to be treated by a doctor who knows how to arrange for massage and compression stockings for the arm in order to make it manageable, as you know.
Yes, back there we have a question. Beverly?
Have you ever had time to pause in your life? And if you did, what did you do with that free time?
Very good. Thank you so much for your...
In here.
Yes. Have I had time to pause in my life? Having worked 147-hour weeks at times, what do I do? Of course, I've been lucky now to sleep flat for many nights now, which is a change from the training nights. That's one. Second, I love reading and educating myself. Third, I love exercise to keep myself healthy, walking, exercising, and things like that. And third, I've been interested in music. And I started playing the violin as an amateur, not like a professional like Mira, from age 3.5. In fact, in Antioch, my mother tells me that I was interested in playing the violin, and she gave me a toy violin, which I didn't like, and I threw it away. And I wanted a real violin at age 3.5. So she had to arrange from Antioch to Beirut, which was a bigger city, in a music shop to get a real violin the size for a 3.5-year-old. And I was happy then, apparently, and started playing the violin. Eventually, I became concert master, that means the leader of my high school orchestra, and I became concert master, a leader of my medical school orchestra in the University of London. The professors were playing in the orchestra, and I was their leader, imagine, as a violinist. I couldn't believe it. So that's one of the things I've done. But since I became a surgeon and working in the hospital 147 hours, you couldn't practice with patients sleeping next door. So I unfortunately gave up the violin after I became an MD doctor in age 24, 25. And since then I've been interested in listening and encouraging concerts, etc., wherever we can find it. But I don't have much time for that either now, because I'm all the time working, writing, or editing, things like that. So in addition to that, I also socialize and give talks like this when I course.
Yes.
I've heard that sugar, and we know how bad sugar is for various cardiovascular diseases and strokes and so forth, but I've also heard that sugar is part of the substance, one of the substances that sustains cancer cells, and that often for people who have cancer, the protocols involve taking them off consumption of sugar and simple carbohydrates that turn to sugar. Is this something that you can corroborate?
It probably is true, but I've not been working on cancer, for many years, and it probably is true, because cancer cells need everything they can in order to multiply, like we do, in order to survive. Proteins, and vitamins, and sugars and carbohydrates and fats, all kinds of things. And if you cut off, then obviously the cancer cells will be less likely to multiply. On the other hand, there's the whole patient to report to, and the patient might suffer also if you cut too much of it. So it's a complex thing that a doctor who is specializing in this field ought to advise the patients. What you think? Ellen Coleman there is a hypnotherapist. She helps patients in self-hypnotherapy and hypnotherapy in order to help them relieve their suffering and to be more successful in their lives and careers. Ellen Coleman.
Do we have any more questions? Yes?
I have a question relating back to your kidney transplantation. You mentioned that you use IgG in order to improve the immunotherapy of a person when they receive a kidney transplant. So my question is twofold. Is it used only for kidney therapy, kidney transplant, or is it used for other transplantations as well, such as heart or lungs, etc.? And my second question is, the human body produces IgG as it is. Why do you give, do you need more in order to combat the rejection, or is it that when you do the transplantation, the body stops producing IgG?
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Kafka, from the Kafka family. The IgG immunoglobulin that we give to kidney transplant patients, recipients, so that they accept it because it's reducing their immune response of rejection, is made specifically against the lymphocyte cells of their bodies, okay? Made in a, for example, it's made in a horse. We inject human lymphatic cells to a horse, and then the horse makes antibody against human lymphatic cells. We take the blood from the horse, we separate the serum, then we separate the IgG fraction by column chromatography, and then we give that to the patient in order to suppress their immune response. It can work on all organ transplants, heart and lungs and arms and faces and kidneys and livers and you name it, all right? And pancreases, it does, yes. And the second thing is the IgG that we produce is for our own use. You see, it's a protein that we have for our own protection against infection that comes from the outside, like a germ or a virus or a bacterium. Is that clear, Mr. Kafka?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more? Bill?
What's the major challenge that now exists in terms of immunology or in the medical field? What's the next mystery that you or the next person in the field of the largest scope?
In medicine itself?
Yes.
One of them is called precision medicine. Precision medicine, again, is emerging from our knowledge of genetics. As you know, Charles Darwin is one of the favorite scientists that I've been admiring throughout my life. He developed the notion of evolution, you know, from simple stuff, how we developed a human, you know, from the lizard, and then the next one, and then the next monkey, and then the human. This was an evolution that's been taking place in nature, battering generation by generation, finding new innovations to make progress on this planet. And so after that, Charles Darwin and evolution, there came the genetics, and the DNA was solved, the structure of it was solved by an American by the name of James Watson, Scott's name, and he's a friend. He got a Nobel Prize. He did it in 1953 in England because the best laboratory at the time was in Cambridge, England. University of Cambridge, there was a laboratory of protein chemistry, and he managed to get there with other good workers, including Francis Crick, who was a graduate of University College London, my own university. So was Mahatma Gandhi, Francis Crick. And so Francis Crick and he were innovators, worked together and built the structure of the DNA. Once that structure was made, they got a Nobel Prize in 1960. And after that, more work was done with the genome. More work was done with the genome. So now has come the time when instead of getting from a doctor an antibiotic for an infection, you will have a card like your debit card or credit card, which will give you your genetic composition. And the doctor will be able to detect exactly what your genetic makeup is. Precision medicine, this is called. And he will therefore appropriately give you the proper antibody. Because as you know, antibodies have side effects, which can be fatal. Because they can kill good germs as well as bad germs. And the good germs, when they die, fungus, comes in, candida and things like that, and can kill the recipient patients as a complication. So with precision medicine is the next step, where we are going to have more appropriate, specifically targeted therapies for human beings with diseases of various kinds, whether it's cancer or other chronic diseases, or even acute diseases like a cold that's getting pneumonia or influenza. Is that good? Thank you. Bill.
All right, any more questions? Yes.
In working with immunology, do you have an approach to autoimmune diseases and their treatment? It's a bit.
Yes, the question is with immunology and autoimmune diseases, is there an approach to cure autoimmune diseases? And autoimmune diseases is something like this. Our immune response is built in us soon after we are born, in 3 months, 6 months, and so on, and becomes stronger as we mature, but then weakens as we get older after age, let's say 65 on. It might begin to weaken. And this is always protecting us. Detecting anything that's dangerous, like a cancer cell, killing it. Detecting any germ that's starting to enter to multiply, killing it before it has a chance to multiply and overwhelm our bodies. So it's a protective agent. However, sometimes what happens is that our cells can modify themselves a little bit, either through aging or through some radiation or through some ultraviolet light or something that makes our immune response erroneously think that this is a germ. Our body's altered state is like a germ. And so our immune response attacks our own body. That's called autoimmune diseases, such as ulcerative colitis is one, for example, autoimmune diseases. There are all kinds of thyroid diseases. Rheumatoid arthritis is another one. And there are many, many, many that are a chronic cause of millions of patients suffering from autoimmune diseases. I myself am Jan Bartholomew is a member of the Religious Society of Friends, and she is with me serving on the Interreligious Council of Southern California. I do not have an answer at the present time whether autoimmune diseases are being handled properly, by specifically. With precision medicine coming up, I am very much more hopeful that we'll be able to solve that problem as well in the next few years. All right, Jan.
One more, Beverly?
Is there one simple thing that can help keep our immune system strong?
You want to repeat the
One
question?
Is there one simple thing that will keep our immune responses strong? I think probably diet. A normal, balanced diet is the one. And that means also a healthy lifestyle, because it has been found, for example, that someone who is within their normal weight is more strong immunologically than someone who is overweight, because the fat cells seem to be a detriment. the excess fat cells being carried by the body are a burden to the heart, are a burden to the joints, and also tend to give more likelihood for cancer, for other diseases. So these, in other words, a normal diet with normal weight, proper exercise, stop smoking, have normal blood pressure checked by your doctor, have normal cholesterol checked by your doctor, take statins if necessary, and maintain a healthy lifestyle. And sleep well is also important. If somebody is having insomnia a long time, that's also a detriment to the immune response and to survival. So sleep well, have a normal diet, normal exercise, blood pressure normal, no smoking, no obesity. All these things help to maintain your best immune response. You're welcome.
Yes?
Drink lots of water.
Oh,
Did you say something about
Yeah,
that?
just drink lots of water.
And drink, yes, particularly, yes,
okay.
yes, very good, yes, drink lots of water, particularly, when it's warm and you are perspiring, losing a lot of water, yes, maintain that. Otherwise you can get dizziness and you can get dehydration, which is also a detriment to health as well as the immune response. You are so right. Thank you, doctor.
we have one more question over here.
And the Nobel Peace Prize. Thank you. You're a wonderful group, and I really enjoyed being with you, and you are all angels, remember that. You are angels walking with human legs.
Next time I invite him back, I think I'm going to do nothing but have him solve your problems or answer your questions. Really,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.